In a school exclusively attended by women, a wave of skepticism swept through the corridors as the news of a new teacher spread. The first class was about to begin, and from the outset, doubts shrouded the abilities of the incoming teacher. Whispers echoed through the hallways, with many predicting he would barely last a few weeks. Enter our protagonist, introducing himself as Jimmy Taro. The initial disbelievers quickly shifted their tone, offering mockingly well wishes and welcomes to the new teacher. Just as the atmosphere seemed to be turning in Jimmy's favor, a fellow teacher intervened to ease the tension. Claiming it was all a joke, he reassured the doubtful crowd. However, the momentary relief was shattered as the assisting teacher abruptly vanished, making his way toward his own classroom. This mysterious disappearance left the others puzzled. With 10 minutes remaining before classes began, everyone was curious about the unfolding events. Little did Jimmy Taro know, his first class would be held in the infamous class from hell, the most feared room in the entire school. On his first day, Jimmy Taro found himself overcome with anxiety and restlessness, constantly checking the minutes ticking away as he awaited his moment to enter the dreaded class from hell. Meanwhile, inside the room, students exchanged casual remarks about the countless teachers who had come and gone, dismissing Jimmy as just another in a long line of transient figures. Eventually, Jimmy stepped into the room, trying to quell his nerves. He began his introduction in a straightforward manner, sharing details about his profession, his name, and his academic background. However, as he spoke, the students in the background erupted in laughter, dismissing him as so insignificant that they hadn't even noticed his entrance. Mocking his seemingly simple and boring surname, the students continued their chatter. Undeterred, Jimmy urged the students to take their seats and respect his words. Unfortunately, his plea fell on deaf ears, and he was ignored. In a moment of unexpected support, a brave student shouted for everyone to sit down and demanded respect for the new teacher, albeit playfully labeling him as Mr. Boring. Jimmy expressed his gratitude, asserting his identity with a simple, "My name is Jimmy." However, the attempt at asserting authority was met with a student's apology, followed by a rather inappropriate question, "Teacher, are you a virgin?" As laughter echoed through the class, the students jokingly asserted that the new teacher was undoubtedly a virgin, making it abundantly clear to everyone. Unfazed by the teasing, Jimmy calmly responded, "Yes, I've been a virgin my whole life and a teacher my whole life." The revelation sparked another round of jests, with students playfully suggesting that his true commitment was to the job and that his situation was rather sad, insinuating that no one would want to be with him. Ignoring the banter, Jimmy directed his attention to the student who posed the initial question, "Mrs. Momo-san." With a raised eyebrow, he inquired, "Do you have any more questions?" To his surprise, the student was taken aback that the teacher already knew her name. She replied with a touch of sarcasm, "Wow, I wouldn't expect anything less from someone who gave up their life to teach." Introducing the student as Hananaka Momo, a 16-year-old model for a magazine, the atmosphere in the class took an even more challenging turn. Momo, unimpressed by the teacher's response, retorted, "Yes, I have something else to say. I can't stand strange people like you, Mr. Boring." She then questioned why the teacher didn't just leave the room immediately. As the class concluded, the wearied and demotivated teacher made his way to the teacher's room. Observing his changed demeanor, another teacher approached, concerned about the stark contrast from the initial excitement. In response, the disheartened teacher explained the complexity of the class, expressing certainty that Momo was the ringleader of the challenges he faced. The teacher began sharing the difficulties encountered, hinting at the influence Momo held within the class. The revelation about Momo's influence in the school unfolded further. Numerous individuals had left the school due to Momo's actions, leveraging her role as a model to exert control. She had a reputation for making life unbearable for those who crossed her, going to great lengths to force them out of school. One egregious incident involved her falsely accusing a teacher of attacking her, leading to the teacher's dismissal. Subsequently, others faced similar fates, all due to Momo's manipulative tactics. Apologizing for sharing such troubling information on his first day, the teacher acknowledged the severity of the situation. However, Momo, demonstrating a surprising understanding, invited the teacher to have a drink and spend time together to build a better understanding. The teacher, steadfast in his principles, declined the invitation, emphasizing that his role was to teach and educate, not to socialize. Expressing gratitude for the invitation, he bid farewell, saying, "Thank you, Tenkiji-sensei. I will prepare for the next class. See you soon." As the teacher bid goodbye, a lingering thought crossed his mind: when had Momo revealed her name to him? Back in the classroom, the teacher reintroduced himself, prompting Momo to approach with more questions. This time, she questioned the teacher's presence, stating, "What are you doing here? You're a mathematics teacher, and our class is physics." Undeterred, the teacher explained that he held certificates in multiple subjects, and he would be taking on the role of the physics teacher as well, covering all subjects for the class. Momo, visibly agitated, protested, claiming it wasn't fair to be evaluated by just one person. The teacher, choosing to overlook the complaints, commenced the class as planned. However, after a while, Momo threw juice at the teacher. She quickly apologized, asserting that it was an accident in a tone reminiscent of a boxer. To add fuel to the fire, she provocatively asked, "Did that make you angry? Do you want to hit me?" Undeterred by Momo's provocation, the teacher stood firm. "I understand that a mistake has happened, but eating during class is prohibited. Meet me for detention after class," he calmly instructed. The other students burst into laughter, making jokes about Momo-san being grounded in high school. Irritated by the embarrassment, Momo wondered how the teacher managed not to react to any of her provocations. In the midst of her frustration, Momo received a call from her manager. With a disappointed expression, he informed her that a program she was supposed to participate in had been cancelled. Frustrated, Momo turned off her cell phone and threw it on the floor, expressing her discontent, complaining that the day had taken a turn for the worse. After all this, already in the detention room, Momo arrives a little early and sets another trap for the teacher. When he arrives, she is only in her underwear and jokes with him that she is going to take his innocence, but soon after that she says, "Just imagine if I scream that you're trying to play with me without me wanting to. Who would the school believe?" The teacher immediately responds, "I understand, you want to force me to leave, but only a very bad teacher would react to this type of provocation from a student," but he couldn't let it go. Then the teacher takes off all his clothes and starts shouting for help, saying that Momo wants to play with him without him wanting to. Momo very angry when help arrives and tries to say that he upon the teacher's bold move. Momo found herself in a difficult situation. Despite her attempt to shift blame, the teachers didn't believe her story. Some curious students confronted the teacher about the incident, and he calmly responded, "If I had attacked her, as that is a crime, the police would have to take my fingerprints. They can check anywhere, and they won't find anything on her." However, it was evident from his shirt that she had indeed made physical contact. Enraged, Momo sought retaliation and attacked the teacher. A scuffle ensued, with Momo managing to land kicks until others intervened and restrained her. The teacher, bleeding but resolute, spoke out, "All the teachers who resigned because of you were just like you now." Concerned students rushed to the teacher's aid, questioning if Momo had gone too far and emphasizing that she should be held accountable for attempting to engage in non-consensual play. Faced with the consequences of her actions, Momo began to regret her choices and sincerely apologized to the teacher, expressing her willingness to change and become a better person. In response, the teacher proposed a unique resolution: "Since that's how it is, I want you to be the best student in the class." He encouraged her to dedicate herself to having a positive school life. Confused by the unexpected request, Momo questioned the teacher, to which he clarified, "Yes. You saw that what you did was wrong, and you are willing to improve. As a teacher, I managed to guide you to the right path, and that is my job. I shouldn't try to punish you. I have to help you improve." Moved by his understanding, Momo burst into tears, sharing the complexities of fame and her resulting frustration, expressing hope that things would get better. The teacher assured her that the students would support her, and as he prepared for the next class, he asked them to give him his moment. When questioned by other students about leaving the situation as it was, he explained, "You are taking care of her, you don't need me anymore." He emphasized that listening to personal issues wasn't his role as a teacher, and he couldn't provide the help she needed as he wasn't her father or a businessman. With that, he headed home. Alone, Momo muttered to herself, "Jimmy-sensei, you're an idiot." Meanwhile, the students were left confused about how the teacher knew everyone's name. Some mischievous students played a prank on Momo, drawing on the classroom board that she had been dumped by the teacher. As people started discussing the incident between the teacher and Momo, a sudden commotion erupted in the teacher's room. Someone urgently called the teacher to the classroom. Upon arrival, he discovered the crude drawings on the board, attacking not only him but also Momo. The scene then transitions to another teacher explaining to Jimmy that there are 5 leaders within that class, and no one has ever attempted to deal with these students due to their notorious behavior. The teacher introduces each one: Tsutsuji Erika, Yabu Tsubaki, Oda Maki, Okana Nazasa, and Hananaka Momo. Returning to Momo, she fumed with anger over the disrespectful drawings on the board and sought to identify the culprit. Some students claimed ignorance, asserting that the drawings were already there when they arrived early. The other 4 leaders entered the room, announcing that the first class would be mathematics. Accusing Baki of creating the offensive drawings, Momo was both furious and determined to find the responsible party. Simultaneously, a sense of unease lingered in the air in the midst of the turmoil. Momo questioned her supposed friends, asking if they were truly her friends. Baki dismissively responded, calling her an idiot and stating that nobody would be her friend. Tsubaki took it a step further, announcing to the room that Momo was a traitor and had gotten involved with the teacher. Maki supported the claim and detailed the story to the disapproving crowd, who joined in talking badly about Momo. Tsubaki left, instructing Momo not to talk to her anymore. The teacher and the other teacher entered the room and discovered the offensive drawings. The teacher immediately began erasing them and inquired about the culprit. As he observed Momo's distress, someone requested the teacher to address the situation. However, the teacher, focused on starting the first class, asked the other teacher to leave. Alone, Momo found a note cursing her in her desk, intensifying her confusion and frustration. Blaming the teacher for the chaos, she confronted him after class, arguing that her life had become problematic because of him. Momo showed an internet post falsely claiming she attacked the teacher, expressing concern about her manager's reaction and expressing her desire to avoid school. The teacher, showing a kind side, assured her he would order a new book for her since hers had been torn. As the teacher bid farewell and began to leave the room, Momo halted him, questioning what would become of her modeling career amidst all these problems. She demanded him to take responsibility. The teacher, unfazed, asked if this was a teacher's responsibility. The teacher asserted that he didn't care about Momo's life choices but promised to do everything possible for her to have a healthy academic life. Beyond that, he expressed indifference. As he bid her goodbye and left the room, he warned her not to be late, mentioning a possible warning if she disobeyed. In response, Momo angrily shouted insults, calling him stupid and repeating the term virgin. She threatened to make him lose his job if she lost hers. The teacher simply laughed, confirming that everything was fine. Observing the exchange, other students commented that Momo wasn't as great as she thought. Despite her status as a model, they lamented the sadness of the ongoing situation. The student mused that if it were any other teacher, Momo might have let the incident go. However, it seemed odd for her to target Jimmy right away. With the entire class against her, there seemed to be little she could do to salvage the situation. Her reputation had taken a significant hit, and someone noted that this wasn't the first time such an incident had occurred. The scene transitioned to another student seeking solace in the infirmary, aiming to unravel the dark past of the class. This would be the beginning of uncovering the hidden layers and secrets within the class. For teaching. However, the student continues, detailing how things took a dark turn when the students, led by Erika Tsutsuji, played a cruel prank on him. The atmosphere changed, and the students, including Tsubaki herself, began to target the teacher with false accusations and malicious intent. As Tsubaki recounts the events, it becomes clear that the same pattern of torment was repeated with each new teacher, creating a toxic cycle within the class. The story sheds light on the systemic issues plaguing the students and the impact it had on the educators who entered their turbulent environment. The story unfolds as a new teacher arrives at the school, encountering two problematic students. One is adorable but disobedient, while the other is introverted, claiming to be sick to avoid class and spend time in the infirmary. Despite the daily disruptions caused by the cute but mischievous student, the teacher develops a close bond with the introverted one, who consistently supports and encourages him. However, the narrative takes a dark turn when the teacher is forced to resign due to false accusations framed by the cute student. Since that day, the introverted girl harbors a deep hatred towards the cute student for getting the teacher fired, believing that it should have been the cute student who left instead of the teacher. The story illuminates the repercussions of the toxic dynamics within the class and the lasting impact on those involved. Adding to the revelation, Tsubaki explains that Momo will lose everything as they start calling her derogatory names and turning against her. Subsequently, Momo encounters the teacher, calling him to indicate it's time for class. However, not only were her books ruined, but the other students also sabotaged her shoes. A crash is heard, and everyone rushes to find a student on the floor. Concerned, the teacher approaches the injured student, inquiring about the situation. Before he can finish speaking, the student apologizes, explaining that she slipped while descending the stairs. The teacher, maintaining composure, directs his attention to helping the student, ensuring an ambulance is called despite her being conscious. He identifies her as a student named Mari-san and decides to accompany her to the hospital. Before leaving, the teacher queries Momo if he knew Mari-san, highlighting her reputation for frequently skipping classes. He finds it intriguing that, as a newcomer, he already knows her name. The teacher nonchalantly responds, "Of course I know, after all, I'm a teacher," and heads into the ambulance with the student. As Momo reappears, she realizes she forgot to discuss the ruined shoes with the teacher but decides to borrow sandals from someone. Noticing that the injured student is from her class, Momo contemplates the unfolding events. The scene shifts to the hospital, where the teacher is checking on Banri-san's well-being. It becomes apparent that her injury is not severe, just a hurt leg. Grateful for his assistance, Banri-san embraces the teacher and expresses her thanks. She shares that it had been a long time since anyone called her by her name, mentioning that in the classroom, she was only referred to with neutral words like you or girl. Knowing that the teacher remembered her name brought her genuine happiness. Banri-san earnestly asks the teacher not to give up on teaching them and pleads for his assurance that he won't abandon her. It's a vulnerable moment that hints at the underlying need for connection and acknowledgement within the classroom dynamic. Returns to the classroom to find derogatory phrases once again scrawled on Momo's desk. Not only the desk but her lunch and books have also been intentionally ruined. The teacher questions Momo about why she didn't take her books to the English class. Attempting to explain, Momo is met with the teacher's response, "You won't save yourself from everything just because you're pretty." In frustration, Momo retorts that it's not her fault and goes on to call the teacher ugly. The teacher, taken aback by the unexpected remark, is left perplexed. Momo, visibly upset, storms out of the room, lamenting that no one is willing to listen to her. Seeking solace, she retreats to her locker to find something to eat. The ongoing challenges hint at the persistent struggles Momo faces within the hostile classroom environment. The distressing scene continues as Momo finds her clothes torn up in her closet, leaving her wondering who could be capable of such an act. Suddenly, a student appears, throwing something at Momo and mockingly apologizing, claiming it slipped out of her hand, mirroring Momo's actions towards the teacher in the first chapter. Other students join in, laughing and commenting on Momo's lack of clothes, while sarcastically asking where the teacher is to help her. Overwhelmed, Momo begins to cry, reflecting on the day she played a similar prank on the teacher. She acknowledges the difficulty of tasting her own medicine. As she opens the closet, she discovers not only torn clothes but also an ugly sentence written at the bottom. At this moment, the teacher arrives and witnesses Momo's anger. As she attempts to leave, she slips and falls on top of the teacher. Some students, misinterpreting the situation, start spreading rumors that Momo is having a relationship with the teacher. Defending herself, Momo insists that the teacher tried to play with her without her consent. In a fit of anger, she orders the teacher to leave. However, without uttering a word, the teacher hands her a package containing new clothes, shoes, materials, and even alcohol to clean her table. He also brought a snack, asking if she had lunch. Confused, Momo questions why he is doing all this. The teacher quickly responds that he is her teacher and will be there whenever she needs him. Amidst the turmoil, the student who shared the teacher's backstory earlier arrives, calling the teacher to conclude the story. She reveals that after being fired, the teacher suffered severe psychological damage, requiring hospitalization. Some students mocked the situation, and it becomes clear that the cute, disobedient girl mentioned in the story was actually Momo herself. The revelation adds a layer of complexity to Momo's character and highlights the harsh reality she faces within the school environment. Returning to the chronology, a student shouts for help to the teacher, revealing herself to be Banri. She pleads with the teacher not to abandon her, exposing the fact that she intentionally harms her own arms. The scene transitions to the lobby, where Banri continues to inflict harm upon herself. Picking up precisely from this scene, some students inquire about what happened, while the teacher questions Banri about the reasons behind her actions. However, Banri only warns the teacher to be careful, leaving a sense of mystery and concern surrounding her behavior. The narrative resumes with Momo assisting the teacher, who is on the verge of fainting. She questions the teacher about the reason for the near-fainting episode. The teacher admits to being afraid of blood, revealing that they even avoid watching horror films due to this fear. Momo helps the teacher into the infirmary, and the teacher expresses gratitude, acknowledging Momo's kindness. However, Momo refutes the notion, claiming that she has disrupted the teacher's classes on multiple occasions, even throwing erasers at them. The teacher acknowledges these past actions but affirms that, despite behavioral problems, Momo still possesses a kind side. Grateful for the teacher's understanding, Momo reflects on the complexity of her character. Continuing the narrative, Momo appreciates the fact that the teacher stayed by her side when derogatory things were drawn about her on the board. She acknowledges the kindness of the teacher during those challenging moments. The scene transitions to Banri-san lying in the infirmary. She reveals that she has just recovered and reflects on the times when she wished to be treated kindly by others but hadn't realized it. Banri-san recalls her days in class when people viewed her as strange simply for being introverted. At home, she is shown being ignored by her parents. However, there is also a glimpse of her with the teacher, suggesting that it was the only time she experienced being treated well by someone. This adds a layer of complexity to Banri-san's character and highlights the impact of the teacher's kindness in her life. Following these events, the principal draws the teacher's attention, expressing awareness of the situation and how the teacher dealt with Banri-san, who had a knife. The principal emphasizes the potential for serious problems arising from such incidents and acknowledges that, as the director, she would have to shoulder the responsibilities. She highlights the fortunate presence of others during the incident, despite the teachers denying any involvement. One teacher commends Jimmy for swiftly disarming Banri-san, expressing surprise at his courage. They admit to being fearful that Banri-san might harm one of them, emphasizing her problematic behavior and the concern that she could escalate to more severe actions than self-harm. The complex dynamics within the school and the challenges faced by both students and teachers are evident in these unfolding events. The teacher adds that Banri-san had previously engaged in a similar act with another teacher, screaming that she was going to hurt herself significantly. Another teacher confirms this, mentioning that it led to the hospitalization of the other teacher. However, Jimmy dismisses concerns about Banri-san's well-being, stating that she won't die and that it was merely a bluff. He even suggests that the fall down the stairs was part of her act. The other teachers react with surprise and anger to Jimmy's statement, asserting that he is being callous and shouldn't make such claims about a student. They argue that he doesn't truly understand what happened, but Jimmy remains firm, stating that it's evident once you see it. He bids farewell and leaves, disregarding the teacher's attempts to continue the discussion, asserting that the service hours are over for the day. The teacher's nonchalant attitude further complicates the understanding of the situation and the dynamics within the school. The other teachers express confusion but acknowledge that Banri is fortunate to be in a good hospital. Cutting to the hospital scene, it is revealed that Banri will soon be discharged if no further issues arise. However, when the room is shown, she is not present. Banri has gotten out of bed and starts wandering around the city during the night, passing by people and buildings, all the while reminiscing about the teacher. The nighttime setting adds a contemplative and introspective mood to Banri's journey outside the hospital. Fixed the text without changing the text structure. Soon, we return to school, and Momo expresses concern about Jimmy-sensei, but the other teachers mention that he hasn't arrived yet, as he is always punctual at exactly 8:30, neither before nor after. Momo complains about how he can be so consistently punctual. While at school, Momo overhears someone saying that Banri managed to escape from the hospital, causing distress among the students. A group of students comes across a peculiar scene. Banri is on the school terrace. Everyone starts to wonder why she is there. The mysterious presence of Banri on the school terrace adds intrigue and raises questions about her actions and intentions. The teachers become desperate, hearing that Banri might jump, and they start running after her. Others shout for her not to jump, emphasizing the danger. The teacher who spoke with teacher Jimmy the day before makes a joke with the sentence Jimmy used, stating that she won't die. Teacher Jimmy and Momo ascend to the terrace to talk to Banri. However, Banri questions why it wasn't Jimmy who came after her. She insists that he promised never to abandon her and reveals that she spent the entire night searching for his residence, unable to locate it. The unfolding scene on the terrace adds emotional intensity, highlighting the connection between Banri and Jimmy, as well as the distressing circumstances Banri finds herself in. Momo responds by informing Banri that Jimmy hasn't arrived yet. In her mind, the teacher expresses confidence that Jimmy will arrive on time. Momo then approaches Banri, expressing her willingness to listen to her problems and offer help. Momo shares that she is currently not working and has been facing numerous challenges lately, empathizing with Banri's feelings. However, Banri reacts angrily, shouting at Momo not to compare them. She accuses Momo of being a spoiled girl who never experienced any real problems and always had everything handed to her. In a dramatic move, Banri jumps over the terrace protection to the edge, asserting that Momo shouldn't assume she knows everything just because she's been facing challenges recently. The tension escalates on the terrace, emphasizing the contrasting perspectives and struggles of the two characters. Banri reveals that Momo had gotten teacher Suzuki fired and that Jimmy was all she had. He was the only person who treated her well and paid attention to her. Momo, feeling remorse, apologizes, on the verge of tears. Banri, on the edge of the terrace, starts crying, and Momo begins to realize the impact of her actions. The emotional revelation adds depth to the unfolding situation, shedding light on the consequences of Momo's past actions and the profound impact they had on Banri's life. Momo starts to recall everything she did, realizing the negative impact of her actions. She apologizes, expressing that she thought all teachers were annoying, and she didn't even remember Professor Suzuki. However, Momo acknowledges that Banri remembers the teacher, concluding that he must have been a good and significant figure in Banri's life. Momo reflects on the wrong and irritating nature of her actions, stating that hurting oneself intentionally and threatening to jump off the terrace is a similar tactic to what she did before. However, Banri doesn't fully understand. Momo clarifies that they both employed different methods of hurting themselves to manipulate others into doing what they wanted. The realization adds complexity to Momo's character, highlighting her growth and understanding of the consequences of her past behavior. Momo realizes that there were better ways for her to convey her needs and expresses regret for not choosing those alternatives. She acknowledges that her actions led to her having no friends. Banri, feeling agitated, tells Momo to shut up, labeling her as a nuisance and advising her not to get involved where it's not her business. In response to Momo's confusion, Banri questions why she should do otherwise. The exchange captures the tension and complex emotions between the two characters, highlighting their differences and the challenges they face in understanding each other. Banri continues expressing her frustration, stating that Momo was always a nuisance and interfered between her and the teacher. In contrast, Momo mentions Banri's beauty and expresses sadness over her envy, leading Banri to call Momo an idiot. Despite the teacher's attempts to calm them down, Banri impulsively throws herself off the terrace. In disbelief, Momo is left with no immediate reaction. As Momo shouts Banri-san, Professor Jimmy arrives just in time and jumps off the terrace to save Banri. Momo remains unresponsive, shocked by the unfolding events. The scene intensifies the emotional depth of the story, showcasing the complex relationships and struggles faced by the characters. Jimmy successfully catches Banri in mid-air, but they continue to fall. The onlookers are shocked by the unfolding events. Just when it seems like both of them are about to face a serious injury, the professor skillfully manages to grasp onto a tree, saving both himself and Banri from a disastrous fall. The onlookers express their relief and amazement, considering it a miracle that they thought would end in tragedy. Students and teachers rush to check on the teacher's well-being. Jimmy assures them that he'll go to the hospital later and turns to ask Banri if she's okay. This dramatic scene adds intensity to the narrative, showcasing the unexpected turns of events and the teacher's courageous actions to save Banri. Banri, unable to respond, listens as Jimmy reassures her that he knows she didn't truly want to end her life. He explains that Banri, being right-handed, used her left hand for self-inflicted harm, indicating that it was more of a cry for help rather than a serious suicide attempt. Jimmy emphasizes that he has been observing her closely, as is expected of a teacher. He asserts his commitment to not giving up on her easily and assures Banri that, as long as he is her teacher, he won't abandon her. Jimmy encourages her not to resort to such extreme measures for assistance. Banri, overwhelmed, begins to cry and expresses her gratitude with a simple okay. Jimmy concludes by stating that he will do his best to help her during school hours. However, he draws a boundary by asserting that after work, it is his personal time. He requests respect for this personal space and advises Banri to adhere to school rules, wear her uniform, and be punctual for classes. With that, he leaves the scene. This interaction marks a turning point in Banri's life, with Jimmy extending a helping hand and offering support, both professionally and personally. The teacher reflects on Jimmy's actions, noting that he didn't hesitate to jump from the terrace and save Banri. She contemplates the miracle that saved both of their lives, acknowledging that a single misstep could have had fatal consequences. Intrigued, she questions who Jimmy truly is, recognizing that he goes beyond the conventional image of a simple teacher. Thus, Chapter 4 concludes. Moving on to Chapter 5, the narrative shifts to Momo taking a shower. She processes the recent events, particularly Jimmy's daring rescue and her sense of powerlessness in that moment. Frustrated, she criticizes the teacher, deeming him an idiot who acts as if he is superior. In a moment of exasperation, she screams, expressing her confusion and frustration. The scene transitions back to the school setting. Chapter 5 unfolds with Professor Jimmy teaching, and both Banri-san and Momo actively participating in the class, answering the teacher's questions. Despite the recent events, the two students attend classes normally. A teacher reflects on the situation, noting that Momo faces online attacks but seemingly remains unfazed.